How are you?
Good, how are you?
Fine. You're kind of walking, kind of.
Well, I am that way anymore.
I know we're getting.
I try to get up on a wall and put my back of my head, my butt against the wall, and I can't do that. Put one end in, the other comes out. Put the other end in, the other.
You know what? My
I need to lay on the floor.
I had when I had my
Guys,
physical
it's time to
therapy.
start.
They told me an exercise to take.
Good evening and welcome to the Utility Committee meeting. I'm glad you're here. It shows that you're interested in what the Utility Committee is doing in the city of Salem. Let's go ahead and have roll call. John Hambacker,
Here.
Harold Hamilton,
Here.
Trina Pike,
Here.
Dave Weiss, Kyle Williams,
Here.
John Whalen. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting?
I will so approve or make the motion.
I will second it.
A motion's been made and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the March 12th, 2025 minutes?
I make a motion to approve March 12th, 2025 minutes.
Is there a second?
So seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the March 12th, 2025 minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We need to have a report on the billing updates.
So all I have is that we mailed out 2,430 bills this last billing period, which 236 bills were emailed, and then we had about 413 people who paid online last month in March. And that's all I got.
2,430.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions about billing updates?
And what percent did you say was emailed?
Speak into that.
I'm sorry.
People watching.
Oh, 236.
236 emailed.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other questions? Work reports from utility crews.
Y'all know, Mr. Payne usually delivers this, and he asked me to do it for him, and I'm glad that he did, and real thankful for Mr. Payne. But our wastewater treatment plant, we're continued working on the FEMA reimbursements, and thanks to Stacy, she has really been diligent and working hard. I know me and Josh ourselves get the emails from her, and she is on top of it. And we finished getting bids for the fence around the wastewater treatment plant, and we're continuing to assess, replace flood damage equipment as needed. And as y'all know, electronic equipment goes underwater. It's not if it's going to fail, it's a when. And unfortunately, it doesn't give you a warning a lot of times before it does. So we're continuing with that. The collection system teams have been working on installing new hookups to new homes. We have some new taps that we're making for some new places in town. And Thomas Excavation did a 290-foot long emergency replacement of a sewer line on West 8th Street, and got that done. They really did a good job with that. One little hiccup, which can happen to anybody, and they were promptly on it and rectified that situation. And daily testing continues at the plant, and the plant at this time is pretty healthy and doing good thanks to Josh and the guys at the plant. They've really stayed on top of things and got us not quite where we need to be, but recovered what I consider pretty quick after the big flood that we had. And
Question: how did the rain this past week affect you much?
we had a little bit of overflow from the system getting overloaded. But other than that, it really did real good. DNR even called us to check on us.
Good.
And that's, that I consider it's the relationship that we've built in the past year or so, or a couple of years with DNR, that they called just to see and everything, and to see how we're faring with a lot of things.
Good.
And like I mentioned before in the Alderman meeting, that I consider DNR more of an asset than a regulatory place or a place that's coming to spank you a little bit. And we're kind of seeing a turnaround with them too. As a matter of fact, when the DNR representative called me and asked how we fared through things and everything and stuff, at the end of the conversation, he wanted to talk more about fishing than he did any problems with the city. So the water department, we're installing some new water taps for some new homes and stuff. That's in the process of being built here in town. And we continue to fix water main breaks as they happen and service lines that are over age that are leaking and stuff. The electric department, 3 apprentices are successful passing their monthly apprentice lineman test, and which is a good thing that they're diligent enough to do their work and to study, and they're doing real good in that. They assisted the wastewater treatment plant with installing the UV screens. They conducted streetlight repairs and replacing 20 lights. They set a pole over on East Roosevelt for a new house, responded to several storm outages, made repairs, tree trimming on South Jackson, and cleanup of old work orders for tree trimming are being done. Replaced pole on the 800 block of North Young Street and continued excessive mapping of electrical system and on diamond maps. And Steve would also like to remind citizens to call the 729-4811 number, the admin office for electric, water, sewer, or street issues. That way a work order can be initiated, and social media posts do not help generate work orders. Work orders got to go through the proper channels to make sure they get to the proper departments. And a reminder to call the police department at 729-4242 for after-hour city issues, so the on-call person can be notified and he can respond in a timely manner. And that's the report.
Thank you, Chris.
Yes, ma'am?
Do you work on the sidewalk beautification project,
No, ma'am. No, I'm the superintendent of the water and the wastewater.
Guy.
the water guy? So you can't answer a question for that?
He doesn't work on the sidewalks.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
And that is, my neighbor had a water problem with the basement, and he did pull, or we pulled, I didn't pull, but we did pull the cap off of a meter for the water meter. That water meter was completely covered with water. Does that affect the signal that's transmitted to
No.
the city?
No, those are all sealed, and where water can't intrude into the internal parts of it, the electronic parts, and no, it does not affect it. The only way that it could affect it if damage occurred to it and moisture somehow got into it. But other than that, we haven't seen anything that has made us warrant that investigating that or to be concerned about that.
Okay, because I assume that happens at numerous homes. I think it happens at mine. I've never pulled the lid
Yes,
to see.
it happens at numerous ones because when your lines are laid, that soil is generally softer,
Yeah.
and plus it could have bedding, which allows water to travel easier through there. And then that's an open void area, which lets the water congregate in that area. And we have some meters, John, here in town, that even dry conditions, they're in places that hold a lot of moisture, so they're always underwater. And as a matter of fact, with this system, that's made it easier because those were always put on a reread and had to be pumped out every
Yeah.
single month to get the readings. And this way, those readings come in on their own.
Thank you.
What's the status of the new water tower?
The new water tower, it's still a little bit down the road. The status of the well is looking real good.
Yeah.
It won't be long that they'll be setting the pump in it and performing the drawdown, which if a drawdown is, they'll run the well and see how much the water table that it actually pulls down while it's running,
What
and then
pressure?
how long it takes it to recover back once the well is shut down. But the new well is it's going real well.
Okay.
Despite the weather that we've had and then the fire that was close and everything, and that the water it kind of shocked the well drillers of how much and how well the water is there. They said when the first water that they seen was really, really clear, and they were impressed.
How deep did they have to go?
But they went down there, I think we're setting our casing at 820, something like that, but we're going, yeah, I'd have to go back and look at the, yeah, we're close to 1,000 feet. So, as a matter of fact, when they were drilling, I went out there and visited with them one day, and they were in the process of switching bits because they had made it down so far and expecting not to hit that much water that soon. It was, I don't know a better way to explain it, though. It was flooding their bit, and so they couldn't get to turn refuse to flow back up because of the smaller bit. So they were having to put a
it out.
better bit because of the ample water supply there.
Interesting.
Good.
One other
Thanks.
question. Oh, sorry.
I'm done.
Go ahead.
One other question. On the industrial park, I noticed the rusting is really getting extensive on that holding tank. I thought we had approved that a painting for that or repair on that.
Forgive me. It's in our 5-year plan, and we will be talking about that here in just a little bit when we get to budget numbers. But part of the issue is that we're waiting till we get this new tower constructed and in use before we drain that tower so that we have adequate water supply for the city.
When you say drain that tower, does that mean it's not going to be used in the future?
No, it will, but when we go to rehab it, we won't just be painting
yeah.
it on the
So it's an
outside.
inside and outside.
It'll be an inside and
Okay.
outside rehab.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any more?
Thank you very much.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Chris.
Thank you all.
Moving on, to review a draft of the budget for electric.
Sorry, I should have had this. Oh, yes. So we're going to switch this up just a little bit, and we're going to talk about that 5-year plan first.
Okay.
Let me get there. Do what?
I was all ready to go.
Sorry. Well, because some of the conversation about the 5-year plan leads into then the upcoming year's budget. And my apologies that I don't know what page that is in your packet. It's page 22 on the online version.
It's like the last one.
Yeah, it'll be the last 3 pages of your packet.
Yeah.
So go to the first of those 3 pages. Okay. And it'll say at the top, yeah, City of Salem fiscal year 26 capital improvement plan. And over on the left, under fund, it'll be 501, 502 electric depreciation and replace. Okay. So this, again, this is the 5-year plan, okay? And we wanted to start with this conversation. You'll see in here, so this, the budget year we're in now, okay? This last fall, we started tree trimming of our feeder lines, okay? They did about half of that job. They'll be coming back starting in May to complete that job, okay, that we bid out for the current budget year. And so we've upped that number. Last year, that was at 100,000. But because of the way it splits the calendar year, so we work on a fiscal year of July 1st through June 30th, and our contractor works on a calendar year, okay? And so in order to try to get caught up, so this is one of those things, hadn't trimmed feeder lines in some time, so we're trying to get those caught up, trying to get a full feeder line. We have 4 primary feeder lines that come out from the substation, and they're the larger lines that deliver power to the other parts of town, and then smaller lines branch off of that. We're trying to get the trees cleared from those major feeder lines to help prevent outages and issues with trees falling on, branches, squirrels as well, anything to help remove access to the lines, okay? So you'll see we've got 200,000 plugged in for the next 3 years, and then we go back down to 100, because by that time we should have those 4 lines the preliminary clearing done, and then it'll be maintenance,
Okay,
okay?
that's what I was gonna ask.
Okay, so that's what's going on with that thinking there. The next line down, transformers, that amount, you'll see it inflates each year because we have been seeing costs of all electrical components increasing rapidly the last few years. So that's why that increase there. This is for just general replacement of transformers. A transformer blows at someone's house. This is just so we have them on hand to replace with. We're not waiting on them. Utility poles, same thing. This is the annual kind of purchase of utility poles so that we can replace them as they break, as they get hit by cars, as they, various things that happen to them through the year. Same thing, costs inflating. This is our best guess at trying to keep up with what costs might actually be when we get to that point. Bucket truck 2 replacement. So this one, this cost, and this is not finalized yet, okay? This 60,000 is, each year is based on the assumption that we might lease a truck. We haven't made that decision yet, okay? So that's the, I'm not sure if it showed highlighted on you all's printouts or not.
Yes.
Okay. So that's what those costs are based on. Like I said, that's not a final yet. The next line replacement at 100,000 for the upcoming year, then we skip a year, then 100,000. This is similar to the utility poles and transformers. This is for, you know, sections of line go out, we've got to replace it. It also, this is also this, when they identify areas of town with older line, right? That's what this one, okay. I'm gonna make sure I'm telling you all correctly. So we do have, just like with water lines, with sewer lines, with our electric lines, where there are older lines that were installed maybe in the 50s, or whenever they were installed, again, they have a lifespan. And so this is to replace different sections of town that have been identified as needing replaced. Garage doors. So we have an issue that's happened at our electric shop, and those doors right now are not sealing, and they can't close them properly. There was an issue when they were installed. They weren't really installed correctly, so we've got a little remediation work to do on the building itself and then put some new garage doors in that will seal. This becomes important as we have equipment stored in there that doesn't need to be out in the weather, and so that's a one-time thing. Pole bunks. These are anticipated to be concrete and metal. These bunks are to keep the utility poles that we purchase and keep on hand for use out of the mud and the wet. Okay? What we have right now were wooden, and so needless to say, they, in the wet, have rotted, and yeah, so we need to replace those. So that then is all that is anticipated or projected right now for the upcoming budget, the proposed budget. Now you'll see moving then into the next year, the next column, we have some of those things fall off and we don't have as expenditures there, but we have a service truck replacement. So this is a pickup, a larger pickup that they take out on actual service calls. It's equipped with portions of line, you know, all the types of tools that they might need. It's not a bucket truck, but it's a service truck when they've got to go work on things. Then you'll see moving out into the fiscal year 28, we have both a bucket truck replacement and a digger derrick replacement. Now, the thing with electric bucket trucks and digger derricks, that type of equipment, they are special coated for fire retardancy, not to conduct electricity, because these guys are working on electric. So they have to meet annual inspections, and so these trucks at that point will be 5 years old, and so we'll have to make a decision whether we release those or newer vehicles, you know, what we want to do at that point. But those leases are up at that point. And then we skip a year, and then these last two items are placeholders right now. We think the cost will probably be way more than what we have in there, but they're placeholders so we don't forget about them. These two items, okay, so the feeder line to the industrial park and the construction of a new substation. A new substation is going to cost considerably more than $150,000, okay? But again, we put these here, they've stayed on the year 5 the last couple years because we know in the future we have to be planning towards that. So what that is, currently the city of Salem, all of our electrical power comes in on one electric line, okay? So if something happens somewhere before it gets to us on that one electric line, we're just out until whomever owns that section of line gets it repaired. Okay. So this is the idea that we would tap into a substation off P Highway to the east of town and bring a feeder line from that substation into the industrial park and connect to our system there. There we would need a second substation where it ties in. And then we would have two sources of power, provides us some
So if
redundancy.
one went out, you'd have a second to pull from.
Exactly, exactly. And so even if we couldn't power the entire town, we'd be able to get critical things
Right.
back up with power. So that's in case of emergency, provide redundancy, that kind of stuff.
Is that P Highway that's 19?
No, it's east of town,
Yeah, east
off
of
of,
town,
off of 72.
72.
Oh, it's off 72. What's the one that's off of 19 when you go out? There's a big substation out there too, isn't
19. There is one north of town,
Yeah.
yes. Yes.
there? Is
Now,
one
our
closer
power
than the
comes, our power comes from the substation out on
other?
H Highway.
Right.
Right.
So that, of the one that's out on 19 and the one that you're talking about, P Highway, I don't know the roads well enough to know the distance. One's closer than the other?
P Highway would be closer and a direct link to our industrial park, yes. Now, again, that project would be a major project. We would be talking about securing right-of-ways to run this line, and then the construction of a large line like that would be very expensive as well. But again, it's for the future of the community and emergency planning, I think it's an important thing to be looking at. Okay.
In terms of the substation, when you change that there are two sources of electricity coming in, is that going to make adjustments also in the substation? I mean, I would think there'd be maybe a arrangement for,
What do you mean,
well, if
adjustments?
you have two power lines feeding our substation isn't going to be changed, it's just going to be modified and upgraded, which is the one in town.
Right, so we have the one substation right now off Park and Grand, right, not Park, Third and Grand. Right, so we would add a second substation.
Have to add a
Yes,
second substation.
where that
not
new
two
feeder
lines
line
coming
came
in?
from P Highway and
Yeah.
tied into our system, we'd have to have another substation.
So you can't tie lines coming from another source?
You
into
can
that
if the
same
substation's
substation?
large enough to accommodate it. If the substation is set up with the right equipment to accommodate it, yes, you could.
Wouldn't that be much cheaper than building a whole new substation for a second line?
I can't say right now. I mean, until we have the engineering done for this type of project, I can't say.
Okay.
So, I mean, that may be the case, that we bring it in and run the line all the way to that substation. I don't know, so,
And one other question, and that is on utility poles. I know you said that they were $1,000 and they're probably going to increase with time. $1,000 a piece for utility poles. That was in a past meeting.
oh, okay.
And I'm sure that they'll probably go up. When you look at a storm, I was wondering, the storm in Rolla, how many poles were snapped? Are poles frequently snapped when we have a heavy wind? If we had a tornado, there would be.
Right. No, we have them snap during winds. We have them snap during winds. We have them snap during, like I said, auto accidents that hit them and take them
Yeah,
out. We have, I
I'm
mean,
aware of that.
yeah.
Is there, I was just thinking like a tornado, is there insurance that covers that at all?
Not really.
Not really.
Not for snapped poles. I mean,
What
now-
is the average
Dang it.
life?
I mean, it would be FEMA at that point, I
Right,
would think. So
right.
you'd look at FEMA if it was
Oh,
a disaster
yeah,
of that.
that's
Right.
true.
When I walk the trail, there's some poles that are really dilapidated, leaning every which way. What is the average life of a treated pole?
it's 30 to 40 years.
That's your age.
Yeah, twice. I was just looking at the number of pole count when we go through all the years, and if they're $1,000 each, there's a considerable number of poles that are being purchased. Do we replace, how many do we replace a year?
I don't have that number, so,
Well, that
Yeah.
would be kind of an interesting.
It would, it
number
would,
to-
and
so we could estimate
we're
it.
working on starting to track some of that more through the Diamond Maps. Chris mentioned Diamond Maps during his report. So through the Diamond Maps, we're getting more and more, you know, that's something new. We just started that a couple years ago, the Diamond Maps, so that we can map out our utility infrastructure. And so that's something that, that the electric crew has been working on mapping out this past year. And so I won't say that it's guaranteed to be 100%, but Trina, you had a question a second ago related, how many poles do we have in the system?
How many poles do we have? I just heard him say they're $1,000 a pole.
Well, right, that's what
That was the
Mr. Humbecker
numbers
said.
that you all gave us.
Yeah,
think,
I
in the
don't
past.
remember that, but
When
it-
we put up a light,
Right.
it was 1,000 for the pole and then so much for the light.
36?
36,000?
It's
Yeah,
36
1,000.
poles.
No,
not
that'd
very
be
many.
36 poles.
$1,000 a pole.
Yeah, just 36, yeah,
That's what, I was totaling up the number and I was thinking, boy,
Gotcha.
that's a heck of a lot of poles.
right.
And if they have a lifespan that you're talking about.
30 years, yeah. So based on that, and again, what I started to say, I'm not saying this is all of the poles, but what they've got mapped so far, we're at, let me see if I can remember this. 28, yeah, 2,820 poles is what we've got mapped so far in the city. And that's electric poles, that's not counting ones that are just lights.
One other question that we haven't addressed here. There's going to be a time when we have to replace the batteries on the water meters. I think they were given,
Yeah.
when we talked about that years ago, maybe a 10-year to 12-year lifespan on the battery.
So on the meters or on the modules?
On the home modules.
Chris, the meters, are they a 20-year lifespan? Yeah, meters are 20-year battery lifespan. The modules are, I think, 10. Yeah.
Don't we have to start thinking about that?
Well, so the modules, that's one of the things we've been doing, that, you know, our issues with our AMI system and the connectivity has been that the batteries have been dying faster because they've been trying to connect. So we have submitted hundreds, literally hundreds, of water modules and sent them back because they're under warranty and gotten them replaced. So we've been doing that.
And when we're mapping that out, so we know which ones, I mean, every house that has a meter, we're making a continuous update map of replacement meters.
That will come, okay? We're not there yet, but that will come. At this point, though, most of the meters that were installed, granted, the few that have been replaced will be newer, but most of them will have that 5-year lifespan on them so far. Okay.
Any other questions about the electric? Okay, rate review electric?
Do we want to go back and talk about the electric budget, or do we want to move forward? Okay, so we'll go back and talk about the electric budget now. Sorry, guys, we'll flip back to the first page of the budget numbers. But I wanted to lay that foundation about those are the types of maintenance and things that we're looking at in the future. Okay. Do you want to start here with the general report? Okay.
Okay, so this first slide shows the utility usage and revenues for 2 prior years, then July through March of last year to compare to July through March of this fiscal year. Year-to-date of this fiscal year, we have billed out nearly 39 million kilowatt hours. That is down slightly compared to same time frame as last year. In terms of electric revenues, we have billed just under 5.3 million and have collected just over 5.1 million year-to-date. On purchase of power, this is what the city pays to MPUA to provide power to us. We paid out just over 3.5 million. That is about the same as what we paid same time frame as last year. Moving down to water consumption, we have billed just over 95.2 million gallons. That's up slightly compared to last year. Water revenues billed is around 634,000, with 120,000 of that being the base rate, and have collected 613,000 of water revenues year-to-date. On sewer consumption, we billed around 86.4 million gallons. That is slightly less than the same time frame as last year. Sewer revenues billed is 997,000, with 233,000 of that being from the base rate. And then sewer revenues collected year-to-date is around 957,000.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, going on.
Okay, moving into the electric summary. This slide shows the prior 2 years, the current fiscal year 2025 budget. The highlighted column shows fiscal year '25. The next wait. I'm sorry, I lost my place. The highlighted column, first highlighted column shows the year-to-date for fiscal year '25, and that's through March 31st. And then the next column is where we anticipate ending fiscal year '25. Then the next highlighted column is the '25-26 draft budget. Then the very last column shows the differences between the current budget and the draft budget. So for the current fiscal year, year-to-date, revenues are at 5.6 million, with expenditures at 4.6 million. We estimate to end this fiscal year with revenues just under 7.2 million, with expenditures being 6.1 million, leaving a projected surplus of 430,000. Each category is looking to come in right around what we had budgeted or slightly under what we had budgeted. Looking at the draft budget, which is the second highlighted column, revenues are predicted to be 7.1 million, with expenditures at 6.3 million, and other uses down towards the bottom there is 749,000, leaving a surplus of 6,000. So the breakdown of the other uses, that's the 5% royalty fee that we send to the general fund, and that's 334,000. We have 415,000 going to that DNR, the replacement fund, for future vehicle replacements and capital improvement upcoming projects. So the major changes in revenues for the current budget to the draft, comparing to the draft budget, if you look there at the far right column, that will show you the differences between the current budget and the draft budget. So you will see 55,000 more revenues for the sales tax. That was the increase in sales tax rate from the county. The major changes in expenditures we have in the draft budget, we have 3% cost of living, a 2% merit for those who qualify. That's under the personnel expense line, which increases 37,000. Supplies, this is just an overall increase of costs, and that's 4,500. Then the maintenance line, increase of 116,000. This is the tree trimming that Sally talked about earlier. We're raising from 100,000 to 200,000. And then also that garage door that we talked about is also in that line. And then the miscellaneous line, it increases 9,500. That is the general insurance. We do not have a quote on that yet, but we do continue to see increases on that expense. So I increased it 25%. On the utilities line, you will see a significant decrease of 213,000. I have decreased the purchase of power projections. I way overstated the projections in this current budget year, so it has been reduced. This expense line will be influenced by the weather, temperatures, so it could fluctuate either way. And then the next several slides are just the details within each category. So if anyone has any questions at this point. You know, it's a lot.
I do not have anything.
Any questions?
I have one.
Yes.
On revenues miscellaneous, so 501 miscellaneous revenues and miscellaneous there. Looking at previous years, the actuals run around like 35. You have in 2022, 23, 36, and 23, 24, 35. Projected year end for this year is 50, and then our draft budget is showing 5,000. Is there
So
not a
in the
trend there that I'm missing?
I know for this, like this year, some of that is just a pass-through. We had to purchase product or materials for the trades building, the electrical components.
Okay.
And then when they reimbursed us, when their reimbursement hits there.
Now, did McDonald's hit this year too, or was that last
Now,
budget year?
McDonald's would have been the previous
Okay.
year.
Okay,
And
so,
sometimes the housing authority has us purchase transformers for them, so it's a pass-through.
yeah, but we don't have any kind of like plan for anything like that to hit.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I mean, we could possibly, but
Well-
can't plan for it.
We may have Four Rivers.
It may be this budget year,
Right,
it may
it
not.
may be this budget year, it may be next. We don't
Yeah,
know when
so
that's
we're
gonna
not
hit.
sure.
Yeah, I was just noticing kind of a trend of, you know, a couple, like,
Right. But if there is an increase in that revenue line, there will be a corresponding increase in an expenditure line. They'll-
Correct, yeah. So
Because
they'll
it's
kinda
a
offset.
pass-through.
yeah, it's a pass-through.
Right.
I see.
Any other questions?
I guess, yeah, expenditures, building maintenance. Are we expecting a certain building maintenance? So, yeah, under expenditures, under maintenance, you have building maintenance. Have we just been not keeping it up and now we're,
Well, no, isn't that the garage
That's the
doors?
garage door.
That's the garage
that's the
door.
garage
yeah.
door?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the garage door. Okay, I didn't know if that would be under building maintenance or capital or something like
Gotcha.
that.
Yeah.
Well, it is a capital expenditure, but it falls
It's-
under
It
building.
logs into that, I see.
Yes.
Anything else?
I'm happy to
Good.
see you guys investing more into safety and training.
Gotcha.
Oh.
Yep. And that'll be across the board. You guys will see
Yeah.
that in the other departments as well.
Okay.
Okay, moving on.
Yes.
Where to?
Electric DNR fund.
Okay.
Okay, so the electric DNR fund, again, this is the depreciation and replacement fund. This fund should be used to put aside funds for future vehicles, replacements, equipment, and building repairs. The only revenue into this fund is interest. We've had some insurance reimbursements and whatever is transferred from the electric operating fund. For this current fiscal year revenues, we've had some interest and insurance reimbursements. We anticipate ending the fiscal year with 57 in revenues. Yep, 57,000 in revenues. And expenditures, we've purchased some poles and transformers, and we anticipate ending the fiscal year with expenditures of 64,000. With a transfer of 217 from electric operating fund, this will leave a surplus of 210,000 for the fiscal year. And then looking at the draft budget, which is the far right column, or next to the far right column. The revenue projections is just interest of 2,600. Expenditures, these items are what was, mostly what was in the capital improvement details that Sally went over. Again, it's all the transformers, the poles, the possibly leasing the bucket truck, the pole bunks, and then the line replacement. So these expenses total 256,000. On other sources, this is a revenue, is a transfer from electric operating fund for future vehicle replacements and to fund capital improvement items listed in the expenditures above. This will leave a surplus of 161,000 for the draft budget. So one thing that's not in here, and we can talk about maybe if you want to talk about the rates, is so what's in here currently is just the current fiscal year capital improvements. We don't have allocated the future capital improvement. So we don't have extra money setting aside for future years. So on Sally's slide she showed earlier, I think it was like 2.6 million, that total
Right.
at the
At the
end.
very end after
So
5
you really need to
years.
divide that by 5, and that would be the amount we need to be setting aside every year. So I don't have those costs in here at this point, so I don't know if that's maybe a conversation we want to have. We'll move on to the reserve fund.
Okay.
Do you have any questions on the DNR fund? Okay.
Do you have any questions on the DNR fund?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so on the electric reserve account, for the current fiscal year, we have some interest revenue and project to end the fiscal year at 50,000. And then if you look down to other sources, there's a transfer from the electric fund of 69,000. We should end this fiscal year with a surplus of 119,000. In the draft budget, we have 48,000 in interest revenues and no expenditures. This will leave a 48,000 surplus in the draft budget. There is no transfer planned from the electric operating fund because our reserve fund is fully funded currently. Our reserve policy says we should have 25% of prior year expenditures, which is around 1.4 million, and that's what we have in there at this point.
So if you remember, this reserve fund is kind of what I've referred to in the past as the oh crap fund. So when Mother Nature strikes or something like that happens, this is what we pull from. So at least according to our current fiscal policy, we're fully funded in that, so.
Good.
Any questions? Okay.
Okay, and then one more slide for electric. Okay, so this next slide just shows a summary of what we just went over. The top section shows a list of all three electric funds. The first column shows where we started this current fiscal year, and then the last column shows where we anticipate ending this fiscal year. And we anticipate having a total fund balance of 3.3 million. The bottom section shows in the first column where we anticipate to start the new fiscal year. And then the last column, based on the draft budget, is where we would end the 26th fiscal year. And so that concludes the review of the electric fund.
Any questions?
1 second, I'm doing math.
Has there been any projection as to what this new substation is gonna run?
No, not yet.
I would think it's in the millions.
Potentially, yes.
Much more than the 200,000 you have as a place saver.
Yes, yes. Most definitely.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see whether that actually has to be built as opposed to being able to modify what we have for the two incoming lines. I'm sure that'll be a study that's done.
Yes, I mean, that'll be looked at when we get closer, when we actually pull the trigger on starting seriously looking at this. But we do have to be ready to spend some funding for engineering to be done and to study it and look at it. So,
Are you guys through calculating down there?
Yeah, I'm okay, thank you.
Okay.
do you want to look at rates for this?
If they want to,
What are you thinking?
I don't feel like we need actually a rate adjustment at this point unless you want to look at funding these future capital improvements,
Right.
things that we have. Those aren't in the current budget. So it's whatever you all think. I brought up this slide.
Is
A
there
slide?
any sort of automatic thing? Because I know in our policy we had an automatic increase unless something
That's right.
happened.
So it does have an automatic, yeah, so
Is there
it will.
any, what would that be? Or do we need to?
I don't have that. I think it says we would review the April numbers.
Through April.
So we don't
Okay.
have the final April numbers yet.
Okay, yeah, I was just afraid, like, if we said nothing, then an
Right.
automatic would go in.
So, yeah, so how the code is written currently, if there's no action taken, the rates will automatically adjust by whatever the charges to us when we purchase electricity, what those adjusted by.
Right.
So, and they actually went down
Yeah.
this past year,
Good thing.
Good.
Wow.
so.
Good thing.
So we'll have to look at that and see if we decreased.
I don't think it, well, it might have decreased. I don't think it increased.
Right.
They get that by going back a year, don't they? And,
Right, but we look at that with the April numbers and we don't have those yet,
right,
Okay.
right, yeah.
so. So. Do y'all want to look at that, or do you want to wait, or?
I think wait until we have those April numbers, because I think
Right.
making pontificating about it now is,
Okay, right. Yeah, at least at this point, we're not seeing that we need a rate increase at this point.
Yeah, I think we need to wait.
thanks.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay. Do we go back and talk about capital? Yep. Okay. All right, so now we're going to go back to those last 3 pages again. We're going to go to the second to the last page. We're going to talk about water. And so Chris, I may tap you to help me with stuff if need be, okay? Okay, so this is second to the last page. This is the water 5-year plan. Okay. Now, this 5-year plan looks a little different than last year's 5-year plan did for water, okay? There have been several projects added into this. We'll go through it kind of line by line like we did electric. So the very top one, you'll see up there, second column in from the left says leases and debt. So that total amount, that 103,411 each year, that are the COP payments that pays for the water's portion of the AMI system. Okay? So that's our annual payments on those. They're split into 2 payments, once each 6 months. The next line down is the fire hydrant rehab and assessment. So last year, we started with 15, or the current year, we started with 15,000 and actually asked the board for an increase and upped that to about 20,000. We're proposing that again for the coming year, and that will basically get all of our fire hydrants that we have repainted, rehabbed, maintenance done on them. And then for ongoing, we'll be trying to knock out so many a year rebuilding, the ones that need rebuilt. Okay? So that's what that ongoing expense is. And fire hydrants are just like transformers and electric poles and everything else. They wear out, they need maintained, they need replaced. It just happens. So the next item, this is well feed equipment. So this item, this is what actually analyzes the wells, monitors how much chlorine, what else, Chris? Right. So it monitors the water coming out of the wells and ties to our SCADA system to automatically shut down or turn off wells as need be based on what's going on. So it monitors all those things. So this is a replacement of that feed equipment for each of our current 4 wells. Now, the new well will have it on it. That's part of the cost of construction, but this will replace and update for our other 4 existing water wells.
So we're doing one every
One a year.
for the next 4 years.
Yep. That's, at least that's the plan.
That's, yeah, the plan.
Okay. The next item, and understand, if there's something that you guys are like, I think we need to speed up the pace on that, or, maybe that's not as important as what maybe staff thought it was, we need that input from you all on these 5-year plans. So the next item is the Roosevelt waterline replacement. So in years past, we had, kind of like the substation and the new feeder line, we had just kind of a plugged-in project. It was Center Street, and so that's been changed. We knew the number was too low, but we wanted a placeholder in there. So that's been taken completely out, and it's been replaced with this Roosevelt waterline replacement. So Roosevelt Street being what Chris has identified as the one with the most waterline breaks, and we're having to go out, dig up the street, repair it. So this is a proposed replacement of that water line.
Is it 19 east or west? East, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and so,
Toward the school,
yes.
yeah, that
Yeah.
area, okay.
And so Chris did talk with Archer Elgin, our engineering firm, to get, these are rough estimates that they put together for this replacement, okay? Now, they've not done the engineering on it yet, so this would be engineering costs, construction costs all in, okay? And you'll see there are other projects in the next years when we get farther down that Chris used the numbers and kind of to calculate rough estimates for future years for other projects, okay? So the next line down is the new well and tower. So as that project continues, this is the city's share of the match, for that grant. So 3.7 million roughly grant on that. This is our share that we'll be paying in this next budget year. Lead line service mapping. So we did that first stage of that project this last year. This is where we had the company come in with the hydrovac truck and dig up next to everyone's meters, or not everyone's, but a select portion of town's meters. We're not sure what that's going to look like for this coming year, but this is the remainder of the city's match to match the grant we had for that. Okay. We're anticipating we'll have to do something. We just don't know what that is yet. The next line doesn't have a dollar amount with it, the lead service line replacement. We anticipate there will be something coming where we're gonna have to start replacing if we identify lead service lines. To date, we've not identified any with the ones that we did last year where we dug up. But again, that's a placeholder so that we don't forget that this is probably hanging out there. Okay, so then that concludes everything for the upcoming budget year. Then moving into the next year, here we have that industrial park water tower that you were asking about, Mr. Hambecker. This is the estimated cost. Chris has gotten some fairly recent quotes on that. So we're anticipating the $450,000, and that's the rehab of both the interior and the exterior. And like I said, we're waiting for the new tower to be built and filled so that then we have that storage capacity before we drain this other one to rehab it. Okay? And I haven't changed that name yet. The 75,000 riveted tank, that's the Witch's Hat or Bottle Rocket Tower. Okay, in the middle of town, off Tower Street. So that one is also going to need to be rehabbed. Okay? I'm not sure if we're going to have to do it in the same year. It's also approaching critical mass for needing to be rehabbed. And
Be
that'll be,
nice to have it the next year.
well,
Or, you know,
we'll see if
yeah.
we can do that. I don't know if DNR will let us put it off,
Yeah.
so.
How long ago was it that was done?
I don't-
It seems like that was not that many years ago.
I don't know when it was
I
rehabbed. Do you,
remember when
Chris?
it was, yeah, but it's probably been longer than we realized.
Probably.
Okay. Yeah. Now, we did have the one over by Walmart, by
Yeah.
Right,
that was recently
No,
redone.
this was
Yeah,
that one, but
right. Yeah, I don't know. Before my time, I can say that.
yeah, well, yeah.
Before my time here, so
Well,
yeah.
it's before my time.
Got
away
you back
from
here.
here.
We got you. So, yeah, so I don't know, and part of it is DNR does require inspections on these regularly. And so when it kind of reaches a certain point, we don't have a choice.
Right.
Now, they've been working with us on this industrial park tower, knowing that we need this new one up before we can rehab that one. But I don't know if they'll let us push off that Witch's Hat one another year or not. So,
Push.
push.
That's
I
a
think-
holding tank only. It's not a pumping.
Gotcha. And then we have the next water line replacement proposed project, the Mildred water line replacement. Okay. All right, then that concludes fiscal year '27, moving out to '28. Then we add replacement of a pickup, and then the East Center Street water line replacement. And you'll see that's a doozy for a price tag.
Yeah.
Okay. And then moving out, fiscal year '29, West Center Street water line replacement. And then fiscal year '30, we've got Carty Street water line replacement and replacement of a dump truck. And that cost is split between water and wastewater, because both departments use it. So you see, we've got these staggered out, and I think, certainly compared to what we've looked at in the past, this is a pretty aggressive timeline for some of these projects, but they're things that like I said, right now, we're regularly going out having to repair main breaks, and so this would help alleviate that.
When we talk about a water line replacement versus the membrane that's put into the lines, are those?
We
I
don't,
remember
we
what
don't
that
line
membrane
water
was
lines,
called.
right, Chris? No, we line sewer lines. We don't put linings in water lines.
So those are iron lines and they're rusting? And they're being replaced with plastic?
Right, and DNR and everybody will tell you, everything's got a lifespan. And a lot of these lines in Salem, and it's just not Salem, it's other towns too are experiencing this every day. The city of St. Louis averages over 150 main breaks a day. But these lines with age and everything, is all metal does. It deteriorates and everything, and back in the days, there were no real regulations when these lines were put in. We all know that the name of the street, Wine Street, named after Clark Wines put a lot of these in with an old steam shovel years ago. Bedding wasn't required or anything, and as
moves around.
Just dropping and dragging.
Yeah.
They can't break rocks and stuff out when they come to a bad rock. So a lot of these lines are just laid over that. And with water lines, a lot of people don't know, they continually move underground. And then plus with your weather on top of the ground impacts that too. And as the age on your lines, the lines become more brittle with age. The impact of weather pushing, and then the back and forth, keeping down on them, the lines constantly moving, they break.
There was a time when we were monitoring the amount pumped versus the amount purchased. And that would be an interesting report to have.
We monitor that all the time.
I mean, it would be interesting for us to
Gotcha.
see that. Because there was a time when we were about,
I've heard the numbers, yeah.
yeah. okay,
Percentage
I won't say
losses,
the
yeah.
number.
You will be pleasantly surprised
Okay.
next time when we bring those numbers. So, with the work that has been done in general on the system, fire hydrants, and then just collectively addressing the big breaks that we are aware of, that number has come down dramatically. So we'll get those numbers for you.
Our SCADA system, which we look at constantly every day, and view it, which we know what wells are running, when they're running and everything. When I came back over to the water department a few years ago, it wasn't uncommon for all 4 wells to be running and at least 2 wells running 24/7. It's not uncommon now for me to look out there at the board and we have no wells running. And our system pressure is staying up that well. And even when we would consider it at a peak time, when all the restaurants are busy and everything else and the school's out, we expected the more wells to be running. And we've seen it where none were called up to run because our pressure's staying up that good.
Wow, that's great.
Okay, so another thing I want to point out, and this is kind of part of the conversation when we talked to, Stacy mentioned about, while we're putting money aside for vehicles and equipment in our repair and replacement fund, we're not putting money aside yet to rehab towers, okay? They have a lifespan. They have to be redone every so many years. We're not putting money aside every year for that, or for some of these bigger other projects. And so that's something to keep in mind. If we want, and I'll go back to when we were talking about hometown grid. And my recommendation on what pricing structure was the one that gave us the most stable pricing each year, so that you didn't have big fluctuations. And so that, to me, that's the argument why you would want to put money aside for these big things that you know are coming each year and build that into your rate structure so that when that time comes, you're not having to, bad example, but double the rates because all of a sudden we've got this massive project we've got to do that we didn't plan for financially. So I just kind of plant that seed so you guys can be looking at this, because here's the scary part, and I'll share this before we even get into this next year's proposed budget. If you look, Stacy mentioned on the electric, if you looked at the end of the 5 years, so if you look down in the bottom right of the far right column, that's a price tag of $4 million. Okay? 4 million, and all we're doing is replacing 5 water mains and rehabbing 2 water towers. Okay? And so you got to kind of keep that in mind as we're thinking about rates and what they should be. The other thing I want to draw your attention to, now, last year we had the rehab of the industrial park water tower, in this coming year's budget. And we pushed it off because the new water tower isn't anticipated to be the construction complete and that project completely done until mid-April next year. So by the time we put out to bid and it happens, it won't hit till the following budget year. That's why we moved it off. Not that we anticipate dragging our feet, that's just timing and how that'll happen. But by pushing that a year, do you see what that does to that year's bottom line? That's 1.2 million. So that's double what we're proposing in the upcoming year. And so that's why I'm kind of, hey, we need to be thinking about how do we put money aside each year for these upcoming projects. And you'll see the next year is $1 million. And those are some hefty price tags. And like I said, the towers, I don't know that DNR is going to allow us to push them off. So, before we get into the conversation about the next year's proposed budget, when Chris and Stacy and Steve and I sat down and were going over this the other day, we're going to have to, given the current environment federally, okay, we know, we've already seen at least 2 grants that have been pulled back. So they no longer exist as opportunities for us, okay? That being the case, grants may be much more difficult to
I'm
get.
sure they will be. I'm sure they will.
So we can't count on that. What we talked about is we're going to be researching and looking for grants to help offset these costs coming up. We have to. The alternatives, though, are going to be, A, if we're fortunate enough to find and secure a grant. There's also the opportunity of looking forward, this would be a tough one, but we could look at a bond. So I know, but I mean,
I didn't mean to do that.
and no, and I'm just saying, this is the reality of what our options look like. It could be a bond that we wrap several of these projects all together and finance, which means we've got to put it to the voters. Or we increase rates to cover it.
The state budget, do we get very much from the state budget? I mean, is there a possibility of getting grants? I mean, they're a little more healthy, I
I
think.
guess I'm
because
not
of
sure what you mean by that question.
Well, in terms of getting money for us to use
Right.
for some of these projects.
Well,
from the
most of our
state
grants-
As opposed to the federal.
Right, most of our grants that we have been successful in getting have been administered by the state. So they're coming through the state, but they're federal funds that flow through the state. So that's the kicker. So one other option which is always on the table, but again, we've got to have a coordinated effort before we approach it, would be to approach state or federal legislators about potential funding and have conversations with them. Now, again, we got to make sure that, we've got a plan together and we're asking a very specific ask. Again, none of these are guarantees. So I just throw that out there for y'all to be thinking about, okay? As we look at projects that we really need to do, be thinking about how do we fund them and how do we put together packages that work for our community.
Well, I think, and this is just my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
seeing that the fire bond passed.
Right.
That our community understands with a need when we can prove to them.
Right.
And show them,
Right,
these are the things that have to be done.
right,
I think they'll step up and help us, but,
right,
I mean, that's just my
right.
opinion
Yeah.
of the community.
Yeah, I agree with that, but my first gut instinct is always, let's look at grants first, because we
Right,
don't have to
sure.
pay those back.
Most certainly.
And it doesn't burden our citizens as much.
Most certainly.
But I just want everyone to be very aware of what that climate looks
Could
like.
go that way, yeah.
Right,
Our citizens are pretty burdened right now.
I get
We have
that.
a lot of people that are
Right.
leaving, and we can't afford that. We need to
So-
keep them here if at all,
Gotcha.
possible, so.
right. But like I said, I want to paint a realistic picture of what
Yeah.
that might look like right now. So, okay, so on that cheery note, I will hand it over to Stacy and we'll go look at proposed upcoming budget, okay? Do you know what page? You don't have page numbers either, do you?
Mine on mine, but
Okay, let's see if we can find it. So. Where are we at? Water fund, is this the beginning?
let's go to summary.
Okay, one more.
Think we'll ever get anything in industrial.
Okay, so it says page 9,
Never looked at that.
up in the top right. Okay, you all found it faster than I did, so.
Okay, so the year-to-date revenues are $748,000. We anticipate ending this fiscal year at $968,000 in revenues. Expenditures year-to-date are $613,000. We anticipate ending this fiscal year around $894,000. Most categories is looking to come in right around what we have budgeted or slightly under what we had budgeted. We anticipate ending this fiscal year with a surplus of $74,000. Looking at the draft budget, revenue projections are $979,000. The major changes in revenue are charges for service, the $54,000 increase. That's the Servline program. I under budgeted that revenue source for this fiscal year, so I did increase that revenue line.
Right.
There's also an expenditure line
That matches.
that matches that. It's a pass-through program. So we collect the funds and then we send it to Servline. On the expenditures are projected, they're projected at $986,000. So the major changes in expenditures are increase to personnel with the cost of living and a 2% merit for those who qualify based on their performance and evaluation. That comes to $20,000. On the miscellaneous line, $49,000 is for general insurance. Again, I increased 25%, not knowing exactly what that cost is going to come in at. And then that Servline expense line is, and then on the capital improvement, it's a reduction of $65,000. This is for a capital improvement item that was moved out of this fund. We have in the draft budget $111,000 going to the DNR, the replacement fund. That is for future vehicle replacements. With that, we have a deficit of $119,000 that would need to come from prior year funds or increased revenues. And then the next several slides are the details within each category.
Any questions so far?
No.
Very good.
Where do we need to go?
Water DNR.
Okay, so past the detail.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay.
oops, page 14.
Okay, so on the water DNR fund, the revenues come from transfers from the water operating fund or grants. For this fiscal year, projected revenues are $314,000, with projected expenditures at $200,000. The grant revenues and expenditures will come in much less than what we had budgeted. As Sally stated earlier, we did receive a $3.7 million grant to build the new water tower and well. The construction started later than what we anticipated. So with that said, looking at the draft budget, with those grant revenues and expenditures coming in much less, they'll be in the current, they will carry over to the draft budget. So on revenues, we are looking at 3.4 million in revenues, with all but 4,000 coming from the grant revenues for the lead service line grant and the well and tower grant. Moving on to the expenditures, these items are in the capital improvement details that we looked at. The main water line is needing to be replaced is the Roosevelt. Our engineering is anticipating again at $548,000. Then we have that chlorine feed equipment, which is $15,000. The lead service line inventory, that's part of the grant. The offset revenue is $91,000. That comes to $18,000 our match. And then the new well design and construction, there's an offset of revenues of $3.3 million. That comes to our match at $34,000. So revenues minus the expenditures leaves the draft budget in a deficit of $500,000. So we will need to review our options, again, as we talked about, look at increasing revenues, which we'll come back to in a few minutes. If you wanna- Any questions on the DNR fund so far? Go to water reserve. Okay, on the water reserve fund, so in the current fiscal year, we have revenues of $563,000 for expenditures. We incurred an emergency expense of $82,000 due to a lightning strike. The current budget included a planned transfer of $482,000 to the water replacement fund As a result, total revenues and expenditures yield a net of 0. Looking at the draft budget, we have some interest revenue of $25,000 and no expenditures, leaving a surplus of $25,000. And then the next, I'm sorry, any questions on the reserve?
No.
Okay. Then the next slide is a summary of what we just looked at. And then the top section there is a list of all 3 water funds and the projected totals. The first column shows where we started this current fiscal year, and then the last column shows where we anticipate ending this fiscal year. So the bottom section shows the first columns where we anticipate start of the new fiscal year. And then based on the draft budget is where we would end the fiscal year 26. So we would be reducing our overall fund balances by $600,000 if that's the route we choose. And then, now we can discuss our options or recommendations from the committee on what they want to do with the deficits in these funds.
So we do have this Excel spreadsheet that we've had in the past where we can kind of play with rates and structures and see what it looks like. So, I mean, really, options before you at this point.
Okay, that was my question. What are our options?
So you can choose to, or recommend to use funds from the prior year balances, okay? Those fund balances. So you can use some funds from there. You can look at playing with the rates. So, I mean, those are really your options or some mixture of those. And when you look at rates, it's going to be your volume rate as well as your base rate. And see where you meet. And it could be a combination of all 3 of those things. It's really up to you all what you want to look at.
So when we look at the present, what our rates, volume rate is and our base rate are, in order to meet that need, I mean, I can't do that in my head right now.
It's how much
I'm sorry.
to meet the need? Is that it?
Oh, yeah.
Because these are our current, okay, so let me see if I can,
If you just
the
focus on
right
the
side?
right side,
Oh, just focus on the right side, okay,
the left is our current.
okay.
So if you can make that any bigger.
Well, I'm going to lose the screen, but where do you want to go to? That's too big, okay. Let's go. 150 maybe? How's that?
Yeah, and then go to your right.
That's as,
There you go.
there we go, okay.
So that's just all the expenditures. If you go towards the bottom, that shows,
Where? This one?
yeah.
Okay,
So right here is where you would put your increase.
your percentage
Yeah,
increase?
and
Okay.
percentage
All
increase.
right, so right now, what's on that screen, can you guys see this, okay? All right, so right now, we have a $6 base rate, okay? And our volume rate's $5.39 per 1,000 gallons, okay? So that leaves kind of down in that really light pink, that negative 733,000, that's where that leaves us, if we don't do anything. So we'd have to fill that gap with either prior year fund balance or playing with these rates and base rates. Now, I understand we, the meeting before, the one where we focused on policies, we recommended an increase in sewer rates. I understand that. I do also want to throw out, though, water rates have not seen an increase since 2018. So,
But we made a proposal on the last one about the sewer rate, both on the volume as well as the service availability.
did we increase service
Yeah,
availability?
because
think
we
we
chose
increased that.
not to change the service
I thought we only-
availability.
I thought
We
the recommendation-
changed the rate.
I think we only changed the volume, right?
Yeah, we didn't increase the base
that's right.
rate, just the volume rate, right.
And
And so the volume rate on sewer's 12. $12 a month.
The service availability?
A base rate,
You mean
that's what it's called in sewer,
Service
yeah,
availability.
The base for water is what?
6.
6. So if we increased it, let's just say by 2,
Up to 8,
yeah, what would that do?
so that drops what we're in the
That
hole.
doesn't do very much, does it?
Nope,
This is
about
what we are.
50,000, but,
Yeah,
This is what
Yeah.
we presently are.
Yes, that's what local municipalities are charging, mostly in service fees.
Yeah.
So it's been
Just a
8 years
comparison
since water's
for
been raised.
yeah.
Yeah, but then you raise the water, increases the sewer.
Well, it's a pretty heavy service.
Is that right? If you increase the water,
Yeah,
It'll increase the
it will
sewer.
increase the sewer.
Raise rates?
hold on, one question at a time. So which one wants to go first?
If you increase the water, will that, then increase the sewer rates?
No, no,
Or they
no, because
won't have any effect on it?
no, it's based on how much water you use, but it's not based on what the water rate is.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yeah,
Yeah.
that does.
We kept that, what was that rate that we proposed?
Okay, sorry, Trina,
Remember,
12, I think.
Limited income,
right.
no, we kept the service availability
raising
the same, we
rates.
changed the rate.
it's getting old.
No, I understand that.
Have
Well-
y'all looked at, we see the budget, but can the budget be looked at a little bit closer?
Well, I mean,
That's
that's
what
what
we're
we're
doing
looking
right
to
now.
you all for.
Yeah.
I mean, we're presenting to you what staff has put together, that's our recommendation. And so what we need from you all is what do you think we can live without? That will make enough of a difference, I mean, that's, because I mean, and here's the thing, it's easy to go through and say, oh, well, here's 5,000 and here's 10,000 but we just saw, just increasing the base rate by $2 a month only nets $50,000. So I mean, keep that in mind. If we really want to move this needle, it's going to have to be something significant that gets cut.
Yeah,
Do
I
you
mean,
see what I'm saying?
You'd have to raise it $15 or $20 or,
People can't afford that in this town.
but you gotta have water.
Right.
I understand that.
So can I throw something out?
Sure.
Most certainly.
What if we look at using some of our prior year fund balance? Okay, which means whatever rate adjustment we do won't have to be as much. Now, we don't want to deplete, I mean, granted, that's not our reserve account, but I wouldn't ever recommend we deplete that prior year fund balance. But if we look at a combination of the two,
Sure.
so I mean, that's something we can look at.
What numbers are we looking at?
What is our total prior year fund balance?
Could you, I'll let you close that to fit more of the screen. Okay, over there on your right,
Over here?
that's our current fund
Is that one
balances,
for
operating.
water? That they're-
This,
they're
depending on
throwing
what
an
this
8 up
shows,
Yes.
we'll adjust that
Yeah,
by.
that's
So
what
this
the
is our
$2
current,
additional.
as of what, the end of this
Prior
budget
year.
year?
Is exactly what we're doing right now.
Yes,
Yep.
based upon the
Okay,
end of this.
all right. So these numbers over here on the right, the 1.5 million, or almost 1.6, that is our current prior year fund balance that we could pull money from,
We're at.
okay? Over on the far
on the
right,
right.
in the pink,
Yeah.
the 1.5, almost 1.6 million is our current prior year fund balance. Now, then that number below, the 917, this is our proposed ending fund balance, is that right?
Well, you played with it a little bit, you'd have to change that back.
Oh,
to
let me
6.
change it back to 6, so that we see where we're at today.
That's,
So that would be our proposed
that's
ending fund
no
balance.
rate increase.
So if you pulled that, what is that, almost 800,000 out of the prior year fund balances and did no rate increase, we're going to cut that in half. We will no longer have 1.6, we'll have 800,000. And that's no rate increase.
Where's the difference going now
What do
between the 1.5 and the?
What do you mean, where is it going? It's using it right now. That's what this is showing. But understand, then next year, remember in the 5-year plan, next year's a 1.2 just for capital improvement projects. And so we can't do that again next year for sure.
Yeah, we'll
And
have to.
that's not putting any money aside for those big ticket items.
Damned if we do and damned if we don't.
Yep,
I don't.
Welcome to local government.
If they're just not
yep.
doing something or what?
It really is. I mean, you just.
They're close to the river.
I mean,
Well,
that
where you-
honestly,
you
that's.
can't
Yeah,
pull it out of
that's
thin
really-
air.
They could be
Right.
pulling from
Right.
that and just sanitizing that water and going if they take it from Missouri River. That's the only,
Yeah.
Sorry. I'll cue you in. Sorry, I didn't mean to do a side conversation. I did a local water rate study of local municipalities and what they're doing and what their rates are. And it's not great, but I'll give some numbers of what I found going to their city websites and seeing. St. James, Missouri has a $12.45 service fee with a $4.15 per 1,000-gallon rate. The city of Ozark has a $12.5 service fee with a 3.3 rate. Kabul has a nearly $20 service fee with a $4.51 per 1,000 gallons. So you can see why, what they're doing.
Right.
Hannibal is probably the worst at $27 and $6.45 for their rate.
Yeah.
Do you have Rollins?
I don't right now. I could probably get it pretty quick though.
Are we moving it there?
But I decided to look into this because
Right.
we were talking about this not terribly long ago because you guys warned us that this was coming.
Right.
Okay, the question is, what do you want to do?
Well, we're still thinking.
Yeah, it's gonna take a minute.
So
I mean,
just,
I
We-
have always voiced the same thing, and that is service availability fees
Right.
plus volume fees are what we actually pay. When you look at service availability at 6, and I know when it looks at the city and you move that to 8 or 9 or 10, you definitely are looking at a continuous flow that doesn't depend on weather or anything else.
right,
However, I always tend to favor the rate, but our rates are, compared to most of them, are not the highest, but they're darn close to the highest. At least in the cities that we've compared,
Right.
and I've looked at others as well.
so I plugged in, just for sake of argument, okay, a 12 base rate, okay?
Yeah.
Again, I'm just, so we can start looking at numbers.
Yeah, it still doesn't move the needle a lot.
No, but it reduces what we're pulling from prior year fund balances down
I started
to.
to say that would help,
Yeah.
that would help if you pull
Right.
it from the prior
And then
year.
we still,
You're not
right,
pulling
so we're
as
still
much.
pulling that 500, almost 600,000
Right.
from the prior year.
That leaves $1 million though.
Right, leaves us $1 million.
Do
I'm just, huh?
Chris probably knows this. What is the typical water meter size for a residence? Is it like 5/8? Okay. Yeah, Rolla, I have the number then. Rolla is 11 and $4.35 per 1,000.
And the average water consumption for our residents, I think we've said, is somewhere around the 5,000?
But
5,000
It's
something?
around 4,500.
4,500? So when
Yeah.
you do the rate change, you don't change a whole lot. Well,
so here's the kicker. I mean, like the big thing is, our big ticket items do come in that water DNR fund, which is the replacement, and that's what we hear from people a lot is they want these replaced so we aren't doing that, and that's the kicker is doing that does cost. We could forego those projects, but then we're not fixing infrastructure and we
For
just
how
kick
long?
the can down the road every
Just a
time.
Band-Aid if
That's
you
what
don't
it
mind.
is.
Right.
You know, it's, you know, what is it, let me go to it. You know, you forego the Roosevelt water line replacement of 548, and you're good.
Right, yeah, that fixes the problem for this year,
Yeah,
Not for-
except it doesn't fix a problem.
I understand that.
It's,
It-
yeah. So I mean, that's what we're looking to you all for
I know.
direction.
Myself, I like the pulling from the projected and then the base rate,
Gotcha.
adjusting it. I mean, I know that that at least is not,
It's even
it's a
worse next year.
steady, I mean, yes, it's an increase to our citizens, it's an increase to all of us, but at least you know what
Right. What it would be, what the
it
increase.
would be rather
Right.
than
With the volume rate, you're not sure.
volume, you're not gonna
Right.
know.
Right, it's based on your usage, yep.
What's the annual household income of Salem versus the annual household income of like Rolla or Hannibal?
So annual household income for Salem is well, I take that back.
Put a 10 in there for the service availability and a 560 in there for volume.
10.
Close, 996,000.
I mean, 20 cent increase dropped it by, what, 50,000 there? Can you go to, what was it 538
Yeah.
is what it was, right?
539.
Yeah.
How much?
Is Salem,
Yeah.
It's family 4.
At least
Is
according
that
to
the average household income, or is that the per capita income? Well, where are you pulling that from?
That's right, 20.
The median household income for Salem, according to datausa.io, is 39,200.
I was thinking it was, yeah,
Yeah. For Rolla, the median income is 37. I understand. I know what the median is.
what's Rolla?
37 for the median.
And Salem was,
39.
okay.
But, yeah, the median is the middle household, like right down the center, whatever the
right.
2,500
Whatever the
is.
bottom income and the top income,
Yeah,
that's right in the
dead
center.
direct in the middle. It doesn't
Right.
matter, like, you know,
Right.
that you can have skewness one way or the other somewhat.
Do you want an immediate answer? Would you like to have an answer tonight?
We need to have some kind of recommendation so we can move forward with putting the budget together. But we don't need a final until June.
Until June?
But we need something that we can put numbers together around.
Is it possible to study a little bit and see where you can get it from the budget?
What do you guys want to do? You want to study this and wait till June, make a final?
Yeah, I mean-
I
I
wouldn't,
mean,
I
like,
wouldn't wait
June
till
is when the
June,
budget
but
is set.
I'd wait till
Right.
May and try to,
Have a meeting.
Yeah, but then they have to
Okay, well,
go
then
through
we
us
have
and then
to.
the Board of Aldermen, and then any adjustments from
Right,
there.
I
Or-
would- I
And
would-
Finance Committee,
I would agree, we probably need a special meeting in May just to,
Okay.
Yeah, I think so too, because
Yeah, because when June's too late
Because
to
it's-
read it.
it needs to be ready, we need to have it
Right, by
in
July.
writing by June.
right.
Which of the two lines would be the safest to remove from the budget? Those $500,000 lines?
Oh, the projects for line
Yeah.
replacement?
Is
Roosevelt
there
needs it
one in
bad.
better shape than the other?
Roosevelt line, I put it first, that's where we've had the most recent breaks over the last few years.
Okay, in terms of the brakes,
Major, deal for the school. And, the thing about, that there's a domino effect when you don't replace these lines that are constantly. Somebody comes mic.
but of the two lines, the Roosevelt line is the worst?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe that after I've seen that.
Yeah, the Roosevelt line is the worst, and that's why I put it at first and got the estimated numbers on replacing it. And the thing about these lines, like the Roosevelt line, being a major thoroughfare for the school and the traffic that gets on it, there's a domino effect when you have a street like this that you have a lot of main breaks. Water has no mercy when it gets loose. So it's just not that one affected area right there where that break's at. That water migrates under the street and it weakens other places of the street. And that domino effect, the longer you put them off, the more street repair that you have to do in the future. And then, you know, we know that the need for street repair now, and it aggravates me, and I know it aggravates the citizens, and it's been done years in the past way too much, where we had a street paved, and it wasn't long after that, we were digging sections up, fixing water main breaks, and this eliminates that kind of thing. So that's just throwing money away when we do that. And this is the one where most of our breaks have been. And historically, when we take a line like this and get it replaced, it's the shock wave and stuff of those breaks. A break in a line causes a big shock wave.
Why,
And-
why is it, what did they do wrong in Roosevelt back in the day, I guess?
It's the same like everything else. The line has got aged, but these lines were laid with no bedding. DNR didn't have regulations
Yeah, I'm
on
starting to say,
laying lines.
my dad probably was, him and Clark Wines,
Right,
as you
and,
mentioned, was
you know, then-
built. A lot of those houses, well, they're on Roosevelt.
Right, and you know, equipment wasn't
They
the
didn't,
type of
right.
equipment it is today.
Sure.
And so they had to use, you know, what they had, the best equipment they
Sure,
had.
sure.
Which, in rock like we got in here, it wasn't really adequate equipment to remove that rock. And it was a manpower thing, and we know how wages back then was and everything and stuff that it would have took to do that. And like I said, DNR had no regulations on bedding and everything, so they did with what they had.
Sure.
And I've replaced a lot of lines in this town that I know it was because of a monetary reason, where replacing these lines, we could have a 4-inch line go into a 6-inch line, back to a 2-inch line, back to a 4, back to a 6 again. And it tells me they were using what they had on hand. And, you know, it just, unfortunately, today that we're dealing with the sign of way back then, you know, and we're not alone in this. You know, I've talked to a lot of other communities and stuff and everything. Everybody deals with this. And it's just fortunate that we've got an administration and y'all that can look at these things and we can figure out a resolution and a way to get these projects done.
How do you all feel about using prior year funds?
Oh, I had no objection. I don't think we do it at
Not
a
the full.
100% rate by any means,
Exactly.
but
Yeah, I agree with you.
I'd rather do that than pass along an increase.
yeah, I mean, I look at some of the projects that are out there in the Industrial Park Tower. I mean, that's going out to 27, and that thing's looking pretty darn bad. And I don't have any idea what it looks like on the inside, but I don't know that that can be postponed much longer either.
Do you want to table this till the next meeting?
Yeah, I
We'll
think we need.
Schedule a meeting in
It'd
May?
be nice to have, just do a series of service availability fees and rate fees, and I mean, I can't do that fast enough here. But it seems like, I mean, I hate to say it, but I know we're gonna have to increase the service availability fee to even come close. The rate fees aren't doing much of anything, but I don't know if there's some other things that we might be able to cut somewhere, but.
So not use the prior year funding and then
Well, no,
go
I
and
think,
look at.
to
I
use
think
part
prior
of
year
it.
funding
yeah,
has to be a part of
and
it.
then- and then
I
increase
think
the
we have
service
to move in that
availability.
direction. And I can't tell you what percent we're gonna have to do in order to get these so they don't look ridiculous.
So could you set up some scenarios for us for a meeting in May?
I mean, we can take a stab at it, not,
I mean, it doesn't have to, I mean, if you wanna do something in the next 2 weeks, it just that too much is thrown in my direction right now to be able to,
Kyle, your thoughts?
I mean, I'm really looking for places here. I don't want to table it for too long, but I don't think we're going to make a decision here. I would table it, make sure we take this home and actually do the homework, and maybe check up on us in 2 weeks and make sure we actually are doing the homework, so we're not just sitting here, 1 month from now doing the same thing.
Are we looking at a meeting on Wednesday, April 23rd?
or do you want to wait till May, maybe the
Or do
first
you want to
Wednesday?
wait till May?
Let's wait till-
I mean, I don't know, I'm just, yeah.
It does,
no, I think while we are here, we need to do it within the next couple of weeks. I don't think we need to wait a month.
Okay, April 23rd is 2 weeks from today. You can be here? I can be here. Okay. Can everybody be here on April 23rd?
yes.
Sally?
Yeah.
We will make a decision at that time.
And prior to that, is there, when we looked at the whole budget and we look at things to cut, are there some priorities that, I mean, we just had the Roosevelt as a priority. That doesn't get cut without having damage in the future. So are there some, when I look at vehicles, I mean, there may be that when you go to the department, they may say, well, this one we don't have to do for the upcoming year. Maybe we could, I'm not
Okay.
in each department, so maybe there's a priority that they could give us in terms of, yeah, we
Well-
can do this for another year out.
I mean, like I said, we have already sat down and had that conversation.
With each, okay, all right.
Okay, and so what you're looking here is what, so there's no vehicles in this proposed budget year. So we've got fire hydrant rehab. We've got the well feeding equipment that analyzes the water coming out of the wells. We've got the Roosevelt water line replacement, the city's match for the new well and tower, and our match for the lead service line mapping. And so, like I said, we've already sat down with staff and determined these are the things, and we've already pushed out, like I said, the industrial park water tower.
Go over that one more time. I want to hear.
Okay, so the fire hydrant rehab, okay, so that's 20,000 that we have plugged in for the coming year.
That's a small amount.
We have the well feed,
Let's talk about that just a minute. The fire hydrant rehab, when I watched them do the replacement on that, is that something that we're gonna farm out, or is that something that we're doing in-house?
no, so this is having the company who came and painted and maintained the hydrants.
Yeah, and I watched the pieces and parts that they were doing.
Gotcha. So this is to
Is
have
that
them,
something that, can we load that on our staff and have that done?
not while we're fixing water main breaks. I mean, that's
All right.
part of our dilemma.
All right,
And so this is to have the company come do the rest of the hydrants,
okay.
the ones that didn't get done. Okay? The well feeding equipment, the analyzing equipment, where we're talking about replacing one each year for the next 4 years. So that's starting with the first one. That's 15,000. Then the Roosevelt water line replacement,
That's the biggie.
yep, it is at 548,000.
But if
I
you
read
put-
a lot, and Chris has a point, because I read a lot about the water line breaks on Roosevelt. I read a lot about them, and it's like they happen all the time. It probably needs to be done.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't, you put it off, you're gonna, it's gonna catch up with us.
right, right.
Last one?
Well, there's two more. There's the city's match for the new well and tower at 30,000. So that's our match to the grant. And then the city's remaining match, the 18,000 for lead service line mapping.
Is there any way to get
Yeah, even doing,
grants for this?
None of those are gonna amount to like
What?
a whole lot.
The Roosevelt thing?
doing water fund
We can
operational
try,
budget costs
but,
and trying to get it
yeah,
actually closer without an
We're looking
actual
for grants.
5%.
Yes.
I didn't know if
It's like,
you
okay,
could get grants for.
probably take operating down
water
about
line
10.
replacement.
At times, yes, but that's why I cautioned at the
Right
beginning.
now, getting grants from the
Is
federal
tough.
government especially
Right,
is
right.
like pulling teeth.
Right. But I mean, that will be something that we will constantly be pursuing.
Yeah.
So, but again, we can't build a rate on maybe we'll get a grant. That's the unfortunate part.
Yeah, my meter rate's down 10. Those are the ones I found.
I would suggest
It's
that
not
we,
amounting to a whole lot.
50. It's amounting to 1/20th.
wait until April 23rd
To make a
to
decision.
make a decision with regard to this.
I know which one.
Everybody investigate, take a look at what was presented tonight, what might be able to be taken off the list or others, something other that might be done. But I think 2 weeks will give us time to think about options. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that? How do you feel?
We have to do service.
Can we ask the citizens if they have any input on this?
Sure.
I'd like to ask you all, does anybody have any input to help us? Because we're all in this together.
Dave?
The comment I would make is the utility accounts are chock full of money. The city of Salem is revenue neutral, and there is really a growing number of citizens in Salem that could care less what other cities do. That's my comment. Kick the can down.
I would agree with that.
But that still doesn't, things that we have to get done, still has to be done.
You don't have to do them right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the problem.
Make some decisions with regard to that.
It doesn't matter what another town does because,
For the number of streets that really needed to be replaced with water pipe, what is the percentage of pipe compared to all the pipe in Salem? It's a
Yep.
pretty small percentage, I think, right?
I don't understand your question.
Yeah, I would think it's a very small percentage.
Yeah,
The part that needs to be replaced?
Yeah.
yeah.
Sue?
On the COP, is there any funds left of the 2017 that hasn't been dedicated to stuff already?
The remaining funds are identified for two projects, and that's the Bone Break line realignment, and there's a project on Franklin Street that we need to replace line.
I have one more comment. In regard to the larger projects in the future that are gonna direly need some grants. The 8th Missouri District, our district, is the 6th poorest district in the entire nation.
Yes.
We have a congressman who is the Ways and Means chairman.
Right.
What's wrong with this picture? It's real easy to make a recommendation that somebody start lighting a fire under Mr. Smith to remind him where he's from and where his bread is buttered.
Amen.
Buttered pretty well.
the reserves.
Right.
What really is it? How is money left over from a prior year and it's not just rolled right into the current budgets and numbers and what is it?
So when a budget year has a surplus where the revenues exceed their expenditures, then you end that year with a fund balance, and that goes into the prior year reserve. Or I'm sorry, not reserve, prior year fund balance.
So it really is, in a sense, extra money that was left over. Didn't get spent up, didn't get rolled into the new budget. It's left over.
Yeah, but they're usually dedicated to something. They were initially dedicated to something. So say you budgeted 60,000 for truck maintenance and you did 40,000, that 20,000 is supposed to be spent for truck maintenance of the next year, I would assume, right? And that's kind of,
Not necessarily.
Not
Once you set your next year's budget, you reset those numbers.
okay.
Yeah. It doesn't,
Kind of hanging out there, it wasn't used up in that budget year. And it's kind of, it is kind of a
I don't think we can pass an increase to people.
it is a quasi-reserve,
Yeah.
yes.
I don't think we can pass an increase to
And in the past,
anyway. Right now.
when staff has recommended a use of it, we try not to. But it's in cases of some type of an emergency, some type of a natural disaster, things like that. But we will use the reserve funds first, and then if those are depleted, then we'll recommend use of prior year fund balances.
so there's no restrictions on it.
Not generally, yeah.
We could use it.
On the prior year, if we use a portion of that, isn't that gonna hurt the next year then? We're gonna be that much short.
Yes.
So you're damned
Okay.
if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Well, and this next year is the main one. You look at that, everything, we've got that Roosevelt Street water line replacement is the biggie.
Yes, for the coming year.
Because you get the other ones, you don't have, well, you have, in 27, you have the industrial park water tower rehab.
Right, and the Witch's Hat and the Mildred water line replacement. So the three big ones there.
Yeah.
How do you all feel about that?
And if you were to do the Roosevelt, there's no way to section that. I mean, it seems to me you either do it or
Okay.
is there a half of it that's worse than the other half? I mean, it's
it's
just,
all
you gotta
bad.
do the whole thing.
You gotta do the whole thing, you really can't do that, sections like that, because of your factor of tie-in.
Yeah, I got you.
People supplied in water, keep the
Maybe Sally wants to go away.
because a water main, once it is ran and tied in, it's still isolated off the valve.
Go.
That line has got to be tested.
So you can't do you
I'm-
can't do
I'm
a
o-
half
I'm
replacement
with
on
you.
the Roosevelt line or something like that. then.
Okay, for the sake of time.
Yeah.
For the sake of time, let's have a meeting on April 23rd. Make a decision on April 23rd.
May I
agree.
ask
Yes.
what you all on the committee want from staff for that meeting?
You want scenarios using big
Can
service?
we bring things down to you and have you run some things?
I mean, I suppose, then the whole committee doesn't see it then,
No,
but
I know, but I think it might give me some feedback, I don't know.
Can I get a copy of that sheet so I can run numbers myself?
oh, the Excel sheet, okay.
Okay, is there a motion that we have a meeting on April 23rd to decide what to do about the water rate?
I so move.
I
Is there
said,
a second? Motion's been made and seconded that we meet April 23rd to decide the water rate nor what to do with the water problem. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. There will be a meeting April 23rd at 6:15. Is there anything else that we need to do?
That's it on the agenda.
Okay. Questions and comments is not included on the agenda. Frank, did you have something you wanted to say? Yeah.
The only thing I wanted to say is last Wednesday, I appreciate the sirens going off. And let
Gotcha.
everybody know it was not just,
Right. Not just a
That's
test.
nice.
Yep.
Nice to be able to hear.
and the only other question I had, who authorizes that?
It comes through emergency management to our police department, and they trigger them.
So, I mean, so if it's 3 o'clock in the morning
Mm-hmm.
and it's dispatcher, he has the authority to,
Again, it comes through emergency management, so they would contact and say, hey, we need to sound them.
who's there at 3 o'clock in the morning?
Is it our dispatch that would?
Well, it would come, but yes, it would come from emergency management to our dispatch. So,
Somebody's on 24 hours.
I can't answer that, because the main emergency management coordinator for the county, like I said, he doesn't work for the city, so I can't answer that. Right,
Who has the authority?
gotcha. And that's the person who would make that call. So, I'm sorry I don't have a better answer for you, but I mean, that's how that, yeah,
I just wondered, like, a lot of times something in an emergency
right.
down to, I didn't know what to do.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, no, and our police department, like I said, they do have, the folks who would be there even at 3 in the morning, they know if that comes from emergency management. They've got those protocols down. So, okay.
Well, I'd like to say thank you on my part for
For your input.
for your input, because we're only little people up here sitting just like you all are, and your input helps helps me anyway.
You made a good decision, Barry.
Thank you.
Okay.
Those are the
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make,
We did-
no, we did a motion for a new meeting. I would so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded that
No,
this
we never
committee
addressed
adjourn. All in
the,
favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Policies.
The meeting